What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Sun Belt Syndicate. This one is a particularly fun episode because we get to finish out the Sun Belt versus MAC Challenge, the return games, if you will. I know Zac's been pumped about this one, but we did try and get the MAC Connection guys on with us to kind of help us preview this. Unfortunately, schedule-wise, it didn't work out. So Zac and I will run through these matchups and get you guys up to speed on that. Before we do that, thanks to W Energy, Fanplex Graphics, TSN Off-Road, as well as Dano's Seasoning for continuing to allow us to do some affiliate links. So if you want to check some of their stuff out, definitely do that down below. Dano's Seasoning's got some good ones coming out. Ben James saying what's up, and what's up, Zac, man? How's it down there in Conway right now?
Everything's good. I mean, the basketball team, which basketball team was better, but there were some good games yesterday, and there should be a lot of good games this weekend.
Yeah, I hope so too. I've become a whole lot more interested and maybe concerned or happy that some of these matchups are turning out the way they have. I think this has been great for really both conferences because, I mean, I guess we have to be honest, right? The MAC and the Sun Belt aren't known as traditional powerhouses when it comes to basketball. So something to elevate them and put them on a pedestal is never a bad thing. I guess before we get started too much, though, are you a little disappointed we don't have at least one of these games on like ESPN or ESPN2? Because I hope the national spotlight would pick up one of them.
I mean, maybe the Arkansas State-Kent State game or something like that. But, I mean, both conferences are having down years. And it's Saturdays in college basketball, especially conference season. There's usually a ton of big games. So it's going to be kind of hard to make it on national television.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. It's not easy to do so. And like you said, as we're trying to kind of break into this new school, new look Sun Belt still, honestly, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the third or fourth season of this iteration at this point, but it's still young to me, I feel like, with all these new teams that are coming into the basketball has picked up a little bit, but not enough probably to get a lot of that name recognition and brand awareness out there. But hopefully stuff like this will happen and we can take advantage of it. Speaking of taking advantage of it, in the first round, the Sun Belt did come out in the better half. I guess, Zac, just on an overarching picture, is that kind of what you thought going in? Did you think it could be better for the Sun Belt, or were you kind of surprised that they ended up 8-4 overall after that first round of games?
I thought it was going to be maybe like closer to like 6-6, but I mean, Sun Belt got it. But I remember, I mean, at like the beginning, like the Sun Belt won like the first 6 or 7 games. It was like 6-0 or 7-0, and I was just like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it was a great start, and unfortunately couldn't quite keep it up. But man, it was kind of exciting to see that kind of a start like that. And I know that I feel like one of the rounds was kind of similar to that last year too. I feel like the Sun Belt dominated the first round last year, if I'm not mistaken, as well. It seemed like the MAC kind of came back in that second part. So we'll see if that kind of holds true again. And there is some interesting aspects of some of these games where one of these teams is hot or they've got, twice as many players that are consistently hitting double figures as their opponent at this point. That doesn't mean a whole lot, right? Because we've got different conferences. We've got different styles of play. They've got different opponents that they've been playing. But it is just an interesting aspect when you see like one team that's got guys lighting up the scoreboard, another team who leans heavily on two dudes to get it done, but both have good records. So it's just different ways of getting it done. It's kind of diving deeper into the statistical stuff before this one was a little interesting to see teams from outside of the conference and kind of where they stand and how they're getting it done as well. Ben wants to share a comment here. My thought on Marshall and A-State game yesterday, Red Wolves never had the instinct to build on a lead, but hey, you win some, you lose some. Still proud to be a Red Wolves fan. Yeah, I mean, those types of games are going to happen. Zac, did you specifically get to check out any of that one against Marshall?
No, I was at the Coastal game. But I was a little shocked by the score, but I mean, you're always going to have games where the ball doesn't fall your way, especially on the road too. Games are a little tougher.
Yeah, I feel like Marshall kind of had a slower, sluggish start to the season, but I always felt like they were going to be able to or certainly going to round into some type of form that was better than what they looked to start with, and that may be the case. I don't know if you just say one win against the Red Wolves is what puts them there, but you know, could start for something to build off of. So we'll have to see if that remains true. Okay, so as we mentioned, none of these are on any national televised networks, unfortunately. However, they all can be found on ESPN Plus. That'll be denoted if you're watching the video version of this right now, anyways. But if you're just listening, we won't go over that each and every time. But they'll all be on ESPN Plus throughout the day, Saturday. Unfortunately, a ton of overlap, right, Zach? You can't start watching these and watch a good portion of many of them at the same time because there's just too many and too much going on at once.
Yeah, it looks like pretty much all of them are at 2.
Yeah, it feels like the
2 at 1, 2 at 1, and 1 at 5, and the rest are at 2.
Yeah, it's a hard slate for you and I to keep up with a whole lot of stuff. So we'll be probably jumping back and forth a little bit to try our best to keep up with this one. But it starts off with a good one. I really like this matchup here specifically. 15-8 Troy overall going up against Miami of Ohio, who's 17-5 overall. We got the first round matchups below this. They both did win against their opponents in the first round. Troy took care of Toledo 84-74. Miami of Ohio takes care of App State 77-63. Early thoughts on what Troy could do against Miami, or are you maybe even favoring the Red Hawks in this matchup here?
They gotta I think keep the score down, I think, because I haven't watched much Miami this year, obviously, but just looking at their scores, they a lot of their games are 75 plus in a lot of the games they've won. So they probably have to do what some other teams in this conference like to do and just make it dirty and try to scrape one out on the road.
Yeah, and I think you gotta lean on your big guys, right? Dayton Conaway, Miles Rigsby, both averaging in the double figures aspect, both over 4 rebounds a game average. But they're going up against 2 guys from Miami over there, Peter Suter and Cam Kraft, both average over 14 points apiece. But again, I think this is kind of one of those teams that leans heavily on 2 guys, and Troy can kind of count on a 3rd or 4th guy to get in there and help them out on the win column. But Troy's coming off that loss before to JMU, which I don't know. Was that kind of a shock to you? Or you thought, JMU early on was going to be able to kind of play that way all season? What did you think about that one specifically?
Yeah, it wasn't like a super big shock to me. I think we all know that. I know Byington left and a lot of their players left, but that's still a really good team with a really good coach. So, and it's taken a while for them to get fully 100% together, but it finally looks like they're starting to round into form a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are. What we talked about before the season, we kind of reiterated a few times. This is a team that's consistently won 20 games a season for a number of seasons now, and obviously already not far away from that. So I don't see any reason Troy can't reach that 20-win mark. Obviously, they'd like to succeed that and or exceed that, I should say, and get a better spot in the conference tournament and hope for an NCAA bid because even though they've had a couple of those 21 seasons, none of them have ended in a tournament run at this point. And to note real quick that this is number 2 in the Sun Belt versus number 2 in the MAC. So this is one of those ones that definitely works out as far as the seeding. I guess you could, I don't know. Would you call it seeding, Zach? What would you call what they're doing to get these matchups done?
Well, I know they're using like analytics and net rankings and a bunch of stuff like that to try to find similar teams. So, if you look at some of these games, I know the next game we're going to talk about, Georgia Southern is 12-12, Western Michigan 7-15.
Yeah,
they're obviously not in the same position in their conferences, but yeah, I think they just try to find similar teams using stats, analytics, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I like that aspect. I don't necessarily, this one works out pretty well where they both have a very similar win-loss total. and they're both in the same spot in the standings within the conference. But that doesn't mean it's even going to be all that close. It could be a 10-point game, even though a lot of stuff seems like it should be a pretty good matchup. One last note before we move on from this one. The Red Hawks of Miami are on a 3-game win streak, and Troy's coming off that loss to JMU. So, does the anger, frustration of that loss bode well for them, or does Miami cause them more struggles as they try and get back on track here? So, be interesting to see that matchup and what that one may bring. Again, 1 o'clock start on Saturday. Another 1 o'clock start, the only other 1 o'clock start, I guess I should say. Georgia Southern travels to Western Michigan, like you said, Zach, 12-12 versus 7-15. Georgia Southern did get the win in their first matchup in this challenge, though, over NIU, 80-65, while Western Michigan lost to your team, 60-56 down there in Conway. Did you get to see? Was that one you got to go to against Western Michigan?
Yeah, it was Justin Gray's first game at Coastal, so that they walked into a very hostile environment, which I've never seen in Conway for basketball, at least recently. Because the students and the crowd definitely showed out for first game of this new era without Cliff Ellis.
Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah, I did see some people at the Coastal game last night that had tweeted out they were a little disappointed with the atmosphere. Is it kind of diminished because of how this season has gone, unfortunately?
Yeah, and it's a Wednesday night, and I know there's a lot of intramural sports and stuff going on the last few weeks. So I know there was a lot of students out there playing football and flag football or intramural basketball or whatever. So that might have had something to do with it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was so behind the two baskets are pretty much the two student sections, and behind one was had a decent crowd, but the other one was basically empty. I don't know why the band wasn't there either. That kind of made no sense to me, but the band wasn't there.
That is interesting. Interesting. Yeah, you'd think if they knew that the attendance wasn't going to be as good, they would definitely get the band there just to make.
Well, they're usually there for they're usually there for home games unless they have to travel with the football team or something like that.
Right.
But there's no football, there's no baseball. They don't do baseball. I don't know why they wouldn't be there unless it's just a night off or something.
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe that the virus is going around is getting them or something. Hopefully not, but I know that's been going around up here in this area, so it's unfortunate. But we'll see if they can get that band back in there and get that atmosphere back to jumping a little bit. And it could start this week when they've got a matchup. But this one here specifically is Western Michigan sitting in 7th over in the MAC. Georgia Southern down at 11th in the Sun Belt. So this is one of those 7-11 matchups. Again, if you kind of want to speak to it that way, when you're trying to compare these two teams against one another, you think that we're going to see a big game from Holloman, Douglas, White? Kind of the usual guys. Are you thinking that all three need to have a great game to beat a team like Western Michigan? I guess as we talk about matchup wise, Western Michigan's won 7 games total all season, so it's not like they're going to come in and scare anybody, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think all three of them have to have a big night. I remember opening night, Coastal's point guard Rasheed Jones had a really big night, and then their center Amenhauser had a big night. So maybe you see Holloman and Brown having big nights, helping them win. But it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, I think if all three do play well, that's probably going to bode well for Georgia Southern. I think they haven't always been winning here lately, but I feel like they've been playing a little bit better here lately. I guess, what was it? Louisiana, they just beat Wednesday night, right?
Yeah, they won by, I think, 1 last night.
Yeah. I think Louisiana had an open shot to win it right at the end, and I think it was an air ball, if I remember correctly. I know it was a miss at the very least, but we'll see if they can keep it rolling. Dangerous if all three of them are definitely hitting on all cylinders. It looks like Chauncey Willis Jr. Is their leading scorer over on the Western Michigan side of things, 15.4 points per game, averaging 4.4 rebounds. And
yeah, he didn't play. He didn't play opening night against Coastal either.
Okay, so you didn't really get to experience him on the
No,
ball.
I think he was. I think he was sick that day.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, you do have to note, as bad as their record is, they do have 4 players averaging double figures in the scoring column, which I mean, there's not a whole lot of Sunbelt teams that are doing that right now. So that is on their side with Strickland, Henna, and Lobsinger. So, it's not like Georgia Southern's got a night off. They're still going to face a formidable team, even when you look at that 7-15 record not being all that great necessarily. But I'm guessing you're favoring the Eagles coming out of this one, because I think I would right now.
Yeah, I'll lean Georgia Southern.
Okay. Did we pick on that first one? Let's jump back here for a second. I don't know if we really said.
No, we didn't.
Okay. This one's tough, man. I really think, we've seen Troy play really well and win some games, and we've seen Troy struggle just a tad on some games that maybe they should have been more competitive in or even win. And I don't think playing on the road there in Miami is going to be easy. Miami.
I'll go with Miami on the road. Tough game on the road.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was leaning. But then the loss to JMU makes me think like JMU or Troy could turn it around and use that as some kind of boost. Miami's on a streak. Like, is one going up or one's going down? We'll have to see if that continues. But an interesting aspect to that one. All right, so the third matchup, our first of the 2:00 games, of which there are many. And I guess, we didn't necessarily say this. Not all 14 teams in the Sun Belt are participating in this challenge for a few reasons, but the biggest reason is the MAC doesn't have 14 teams like the Sun Belt does. So that automatically takes out a number of options when that is concerned. And then Marshall's one that probably, from the sounds of it, will never participate in this challenge because they have past history with MAC teams and they kind of scheduled them outside of the conference play on a typical basis. So for some reason, I guess they didn't want to include them in the past 2 seasons in this. And ULM's the other one that is not participating this go around. I feel like ULM was out last year as well.
No, it was Coastal.
Was Coastal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So they did move that one. I was surprised they didn't throw Marshall in there. I mean, if they have history and you want to draw up some attention, I'm thinking that's probably a good idea for this.
Well, I mean, like if they're already scheduling MAC schools and outside, like in their non-con, I mean, and then they try to go like analytically based and all that stuff. Like, what if like analytically they match up like good with like a team they've already played in the non-con, and then like it screws up other matchups. So I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense a little bit.
Yeah, I did not think about the fact that the return matchup would be dependent, and then, like you said, you could have a rematch. Or, yeah, that's a good point. Now it makes a little bit more sense as to why they might.
I mean, it's still like one of the biggest brands in the conference not playing, which is kind of disappointing, but it makes sense a little bit.
Yeah. I would just think like that would draw attention of the MAC people, right? Like, oh, we get to play Marshall again. We get to try and beat them again. And
it's not far away.
I hadn't thought about it from that point of view, but that does make sense. All right. Saturday, 2 p.m. start, 1 Central Time. Southern Miss travels on the road to play Ball State, the Battle of the Birds, as we've seen a couple times already this season with so many bird logos and nicknames across college sports. But 10-14 Southern Miss, 10-12 Ball State. Southern Miss got the win in this first part of the challenge against Bowling Green, 77-68. Ball State lost to Georgia State, 71-66. Anything in particular sticking out in this one against 2 teams that are really very similarly placed within both of their conference standings in this one?
Yeah, well, Ball State was the original college I was supposed to go to at first. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's up in Indiana. So, I might have my eyes peeled to this one a little bit more. But, Ball State, I kind of keep up with them a little bit just because they're from Indiana and they're not particularly they don't stand out to me really at all. Yeah. I mean, they have Peyton Sparks, who was, I'm pretty sure, MAC Player of the Year a couple years ago and then transferred to Indiana last year and never played. So he came back and he started out really rough this season, but he's been playing good. So that's probably their biggest threat. And then they have Mickey Pearson on the wings who they'll have to guard well. But I think Southern Miss matches up well with them because I think we've seen they don't really play. Denjay Harris is maybe a little bit smaller than Sparks, but I like Harris. And then they play a bunch of wings who can match up well with some of these other guys at Ball State.
Nice. I like that breakdown. Yeah, that's what I was kind of going to look at was Denjay Harris versus Peyton Sparks down inside, battling for those rebounds. Like you said, I mean, I think they, like you said, pretty similar sized, right? I don't think one's like 5 inches taller than the other. I
No,
think it
I
might
think
be.
yeah, Sparks is an undersized center, but he's got definitely gonna have the weight on Harris.
Yes, that's definitely true. I wonder if
But
Harris has got like a little bit quicker of a step or a jump because of that. Like that's his advantage is that it's the athleticism more than the strength. But I don't know. We'll have to
yeah,
see on that. Sparks averaging 7.9 rebounds per game, so nothing to shake your fist at there. Although Harris has got 10.9, but he's just the leader in the clubhouse. The problem I have with Southern Miss and trusting them to just go out there and win this game without any question is Alvarez and Curbelo are averaging just around 10 points per game, and we've seen both or one of them be cold quite a bit, and Harris is having to do shoulder more of the load for a win like this. And Ball State's got a guy named Jeremiah Hill, who is their leading scorer, actually 16.4 points per game. So, I just don't know if I trust Southern Miss to say they'll just win this. I would lean that way, honestly, solely because I've seen more of them. It's kind of a bad reason to kind of pick them. But with two teams not being great, Southern Miss having a pedigree of winning some of those big games in the past couple seasons, the ability to do so as a possibility here, I'm going to lean the Golden Eagles. What about you?
yeah, I'll go Southern Miss as well. I mean, also they're going into a not very hostile environment. There'll probably be a couple hundred people there. Like no one shows up to their Ball State's games,
Gotcha.
so they won't have to worry about a loud crowd or anything either.
Yeah. Well, they're probably experiencing some of that down there with the season they're going through as well. So it'll be interesting to see if that does kind of play to their advantage and not a hostile road environment, like you said. So we'll see what transpires in that one. Another 2 p.m., 1 Eastern or 1 Central time tip. South Alabama goes on the road to play the Akron Zips. South Alabama sitting at 16-8 overall. The Zips come in at 17-5. Both teams, interestingly enough, as good as those records sound and as good as they're both sitting within their own conferences, both teams lost their first round of this challenge. South Alabama lost to Central Michigan 74-70, so a very close game there. And Akron lost to Arkansas State, very respectable loss, obviously, 80-75. That one actually in overtime. All right, I guess with where they're sitting at now, and before I clicked in to see how they did in that first round, I was shocked that both of these teams actually lost. Is that something that kind of surprised you to see looking at this matchup to start with?
I mean, like seeing where they sit now, yeah. But Akron lost to obviously Arkansas State, really good team. And then, if I remember right, South Alabama was down like a ton and came back and almost won that game, like a ton.
That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, based off where they sit right now, those are two interesting losses. But I mean, at the time, they both obviously made sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we didn't know what South Alabama would be at that point, right? And being down a lot early was like, no, I guess they're not going to be very good. Like you said, they came roaring back and almost got back into it. Probably just a little too late, I guess. But I would expect pretty good games from Miles Corey and Barry Dunning Jr. And I think for them to win this game, they're going to stand out. South Alabama's third in the Sun Belt, while Akron is actually first in the MAC. So this is one of those ones that's not tried directly across the conferences from each other. It's a little catty corner, so it'll see if a win either way can spark one of these teams a little bit in that net RPI strength of schedule type of argument for them. And it looks like there's two guys on the Zips named Johnson. They do not seem to be related. Nate Johnson and Tavari Johnson, they're two leading scorers, averaging both over 12 points per game. So nothing incredible there. But, obviously with that good record, they've got a number of guys that can get it done. And I had a note, Sharon Young shooting pretty good from three. So that's one of the guys that maybe isn't at the top of the scoring chart that you could probably keep an eye out on, because if he gets hot, that could be something that could be problematic for the Jags. Some other notes from you, Zach, on this one, or something of interest for you?
Yeah, I think it'll be a tough game for South Alabama. I think we know they're starting to struggle a little bit. They lost to ULM twice, barely beat Louisiana. Maybe yesterday was a get-right game. They went to Coastal and absolutely slaughtered them.
That's true.
They could not miss from three. It was actually insane. So maybe yesterday was a get-right game, but this is maybe the toughest road trip of the challenge.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Akron comes in with that pretty good pedigree overall in basketball. Obviously, being the top of the MAC, not going to be one you just walk into and walk out with a victory. For that reason, and what we've seen with South Alabama being pretty good, but they've had some down games that are kind of surprising. I'm going to favor the Zips mainly because it's a road game. We've seen some of those struggles. We talked about that a lot in that last episode. Are you going to do the same? Are you going to pick the Jags to take this one?
No, I'll go Akron in a close one.
Gotcha. I think that's fair, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Jags could hang in there and shoot well enough to win. But yeah, my money would be on the Akron Zips to take that one, especially at home in what we've seen out of college basketball so far this year. Okay, ODU, a bit of a surprise team early on, but sitting at 11-13 overall right now, goes up against Eastern Michigan, who is 10-12. So this is a very even matchup as far as the overall records are concerned. Both teams lost their first round match in this challenge. ODU to Buffalo, 83-82, so a very close loss in that one. And Eastern Michigan lost pretty heavily to a Texas State team, 64-44. You see these teams both competing a little bit better. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say ODU played badly when they scored 82 points. They just lost out on that one. But Eastern Michigan definitely will need to step it up to compete a little bit better in this one, don't you think?
Yeah, and EMU is also on a 3-game losing streak, so that won't bode well for them.
No, not at all. ODU has had some pretty good games, and again, early part of the season wasn't great. They've kind of been down and up, I guess, is the best way to describe them. I don't know if I have a ton of confidence, but Sean Durr-Gordon, I mean, are we thinking like he's the odds-on favorite for Player of the Year at this point, or we think there's another guy that's standing out above him?
I think there's two guys. I was checking some stats earlier. I think there's, I think Miles Tate. He's been I think he's averaging like 17 and 7 or 17 and 6 or something like that. And 16, yeah. So he's been really good. And if he doesn't play good, I think we know App State is probably going to struggle. Yes. And then obviously Denjay Harris, he's been a monster. True. But obviously scoring the ball just because some of the guys we expected to step up haven't stepped up, but also defensively, he might be the defensive player of the year as well.
Yeah, that's I feel like if I had a vote right now, I'm going with him just because he's the most well-rounded, right? Like he's got
team's not as good, but
yeah, he's got 8.5 rebounds averaging per game. Like nobody else who's got that many points is averaging quite that many rebounds per game as well. I feel like maybe Huntley's actually up there with 15 points. But yeah, interesting enough, because a lot of times you end up seeing that guy get picked because they're on a better team, right? And that's the unfortunate part for where ODU sits currently. He's probably not going to get as many looks as he maybe should because they don't even have a winning record at this point. This is a game I think they can easily take if they play well. They have to play their better game. They have to have Davis, Walker, playing very well to get that. EMU, as bad as their record is, once again, they've got 4 players averaging in double figures on the scoring aspect. So Deshaun Nelson leads the way with 15.4 per game, and Christian Henry just behind him at 15 even per game. And Nelson adds 5.8 average rebounds as well. So pretty good all-around player. So we'll have some good players in this matchup for sure. We'll just see if one of these teams can continue to turn it around, I guess I should say, because neither one's going to like where they're sitting in the standings right now. You got anything different? You think ODU's strong enough to take this one over Eastern Michigan?
Yeah, I'll go with ODU. Sorry, I combined the 2 of them, but I'll go ODU.
It was bound to happen at some point when you've got WMU,
ODU, EMU, NIU,
ODU. Yeah, it's insane.
LSU.
Yeah, all the letters combining to just get into a jumbled mess when you're sitting here trying to keep it straight and talk about all these things at once. All right, another 2 p.m. tip yet again. The Cajuns go on the road to play NIU. Man, this would have been a pretty good football matchup this past year, I feel like, too. Unfortunately, the standings for basketball are pretty ugly for both, as the Cajuns sit at just 7-17 overall, while NIU comes in at 5-17. Both kind of obviously here lost their first round matchups in this challenge. The Cajuns to Kent State 70-66, and NIU to Georgia Southern 80-65. So one of those ones that look pretty good for Georgia Southern to start the year until you see where NIU has ended up. I guess, let's see. Mustafa's biggest standout for the Cajun continues to be at 13.5 points per game and 5.5 rebounds, averaging just a little bit more than Kentrell Garnett, who's got 10.5 and 2.2 rebounds per game. Is there some other notes on the Cajun side of things that you want to mention? Oh, you want to talk about some coaching possibilities, I guess, that their rumor mill is throwing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a couple names, but a name that I know I've been told, and as well as like Trilly Donovan. Obviously, everybody knows Trilly Donovan. A name to watch out for is Quantus White, I think is his name. He's the associate head coach at Houston, one of the best teams in the country. Associate head coach, was the assistant coach at Tulane, and also was a longtime AAU coach in the state of Louisiana. So that could be an interesting name to watch out for.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and probably spark a little interest and intrigue for a program who's in desperate search of it at this point, because we know before the season started, Cajuns were thought to be pretty good. Obviously, the injury to start with wasn't going to do them any favors, and they haven't kind of reached expectations since then either. As far as NIU is concerned, Quentin Jones is their leading scorer at 16.4 points per game, 4.2 rebound average, and James Dent Jr., 13.6 and 5.5 rebounds per game. Oh, man, this is a tough one. I really don't lean strongly either way. Do you have like a strong preference on this, or are you kind of thinking the same thing? You just really don't know who to pick in this?
I'll say not necessarily strong, but a good preference, and that'll be Louisiana. I mean, NIU's lost 9 of their last 10, 11 out of their last 13. And
okay.
If any college basketball fan should subscribe to Trilly Donovan's Discord, because everything's in there. You can talk to any college basketball fan you want, but he mentioned today that it sounds like the NIU coach won't be there for much longer. So maybe it's the nail in the coffin.
Interesting. There's the little tidbit. Hey, we don't give free ads out here, Zach. So we're going to charge commission on all the sales you get to Trilly Donovan.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure most of you guys are already in it.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
You're already college basketball junkies.
Yeah, that's true. You've told me all about that. I have yet to jump in there myself, but it sounds like the place to be, especially come anywhere close to tournament time, right?
Yeah, or off-season time, because that's pretty much most of the off-season news, like transfers, recruiting, coaching searches, all that stuff, you'll find out before it actually happens.
Nice. Makes sense. It's what you literally get what you pay for there. So that's a good thing. I guess I don't know if I officially picked, but I'll lean Louisiana because of that last note there. That helped swing me because I was kind of flip a coin, really, is how I kind of was going into that. So with what you had said, we'll go that direction. To note, Louisiana is also on a 2-game losing streak, so it's not like they're coming in hot or anything either. But yeah, NIU looks like
they 2 close losses though.
True, it's a good point. They were close. All right, our next matchup, again, 2 p.m. and 1 Central tip-off time. James Madison versus the Toledo Rockets, 15-9 versus 14-8. JMU did win their first matchup in the challenge over Ohio, 88-78, while Toledo went down to Troy, 84-74. But both pretty good matchups there in that first round of this challenge. Is there a Mark Freeman sighting? He's going to take over this game and bring the victory to the Dukes? You got somebody else you might think is going to stand out in this one?
I just think any of the 3 guards. I mean, They have 3 elite guards for the mid-major level: Brown, Freeman, and Lindsey. So I think, I know at least one of them is going to have to go off if they want to win.
Yeah, good point. They're also on a 5-game win streak, so that bodes pretty well, coming in pretty hot there. Toledo, though, is on a 4-game win streak, so you do have to kind of say that they're both coming in hot. Toledo 3rd in the MAC, while JMU sits 5th place. I mean, again, we were talking about this before we went live with Zach, but not sure exactly how the tiebreakers work out. There's such a jumbled mess because, JMU beats Troy, but Troy beat App State. So, but App State swept JMU. So, it's like, where do you put all these teams? So we're just going to go by the ESPN standings for right now, just to keep it plain and simple on our side of things. So technically, JMU may not sit at 5th, but where the standings look in ESPN, that's where they're currently located. But a great game that this one should be anyway. Sonny Wilson and Sam Lewis are the 2 leading scorers, both averaging 15 or more points per game, and both right at the 5 rebounds each per game as well. So Ben's chiming in saying he's actually going to take Toledo. I don't necessarily think anybody's wrong here on the early outset. Like, there's nothing here that jumps out of the page completely to me either way. Once again, you got to think that there's some that are going to favor the MAC in this return game because they are playing at home. Because of that, I probably lean toward Toledo as well. I just don't think JMU is what they were last year. But Zach, be interesting because what you said to start with made me believe you may be leaning towards the Dukes in this one.
No. I'll go with Toledo. At home, a good team. They're on a 4-game win streak. I saw them play. They played Purdue in Mackey in West Lafayette. So I saw that game. They hung around in there for the first half, maybe 25 minutes. Solid team. They got some guards that can fill it up and a couple good bigs. So I'll lean Toledo in a close game here.
Nice. Okay. I mean, not nice for the Dukes fans that are watching. They're going to hate all of us because all three of us, including Ben, just took Toledo. But, again, there's probably not a very realistic option that the Sun Belt sweeps all these games. So we got to pick some other ways. I wish the Mac guys were here for that aspect so we could play off of that in each direction. Next matchup, again, same time, Georgia State at 9-15 going up against Buffalo at 7-15. Both teams, this is one of those weird ones where they don't have great records, but they both did win their first round matchup in the challenge. Georgia State over Ball State 71-66 and ODU over Buffalo. Kind of mentioned that one already because we talked about ODU's matchup, but they beat Buffalo 83-82. The Battle of the Blues in this one, a cat versus a bull. I mean, they kind of still look kind of similar logo-wise here. Any strong preference here? I know Georgia State's probably looking a little bit better here lately, and don't know a ton about Buffalo, but they've got some scores on them.
Yeah, I'll probably go with Georgia State. Even though the record's 9-15, I really like their team. They're just obviously they're not deep, and they're just really streaky as well. Like if they're hot, they could beat pretty much anyone. But if they're cold, they can lose to pretty much anyone. So it all depends on how they shoot from 3.
Yeah. I like the lineup of Nutter, Lane, and Edwards, all well over 13 points a game, average-wise. Again, like you said, we've seen some inconsistencies there. Buffalo's got Ryan Sable and Tyson Dunn on their side. Sable scoring a little bit closer to 16 points per game, so he's a little bit more of a standout, and Dunn's at 12.6. So, again, if that collection of those 3 strong players over there for the Panthers can come together and have a pretty big game, I don't think that there's any reason to think that they couldn't take this one in Buffalo. I kind of would assume that Buffalo is not a tremendously difficult place to play as far as the home atmosphere. I don't know if you know anything specific there, Zach, on the Buffalo Bulls there.
No, but I mean, I'm with you. I assume that it's not the best environment.
Gotcha. Ben's also going to take Georgia State. I think that's a sweep, right? We're all going Panthers on that one?
Yep.
Panthers over Bulls. Okay, that one wasn't too much of a toss-up, so we got one. All right, Zach, you're going to be our expert on this one as Coastal Carolina is traveling up to Bowling Green to take on the Eagles there. Coastal 8-16 overall, Bowling Green 8-14 overall, so almost identical records there. Coastal did win their first round matchup over Western Michigan 60-56, while Bowling Green lost to Southern Miss 77-68. All right, take it away, Zach. Where are we going on this? What are our thoughts? Who's playing well? Who's got to play well to win this game?
I mean, for Coastal, Jordan Battle has been really good for Coastal lately. He had 23 last night. Coastal was down by 38 in the second half to South Alabama and went on an 18-0 run, pretty much solely from Jordan Battle and Henry Abraham just draining threes after threes. And then South Alabama called a timeout and hit a dagger with like 7 to go, but kind of killed that run. But Battle's been playing good. Henry's been playing good. Abraham. I think the bigs got to play good this game. Bowling Green, I know they run 2 bigs. One of them 6'7", 270, and he's like, and he can move. Like, I don't know. You remember DJ Burns last year for NC State?
Yep.
Like very similar to that. I mean, obviously a little smaller, but very similar to that. A guy that good passer, can hit threes, can move around. So they're gonna have to play good, and we'll see if Mulabea plays for them because I think they've been really missing him.
Yeah. Anything to speak on Coastal struggles on the road, though? That's where I have some hesitation on picking Coastal because I think this is definitely, for me, another coin toss game. But Coastal just 2-11 away from home. While you got to look at Bowling Green not being tremendous at home, but they do have a winning record at 6-5. They're only 1-8 on the road, so they're lucky they're not going to Coastal to play this game. But yeah, I mean, is the road woes a concern, or do you think this is the type of game where they can take advantage of a even weaker team than themselves to get back on the right track a little bit?
I mean, I don't think necessarily only going on the road is a concern. I think just their team this year as a whole is a concern. But yeah, first year with a new head coach, he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to get some his guys in there. You know, he came in like March, so like he's a cycle behind on recruiting high school kids. He's got to just try to get as many good transfers as he can, and he relied on a bunch of JUCO kids, and it's just not been the best like fit overall. So it'll be a long process for him at Coastal, but I'll probably go with Bowling Green. Like, there's nothing Coastal's done that makes me say that I can pick them. And I watched the Bowling Green game the other day. It was on national television, and that place was packed and loud. So it'll be interesting to see if it's like that Saturday.
Yeah, I would not have really predicted that. So yeah, if they've got a raucous crowd, that's I don't know. Sometimes that helps the other team shine a little bit more too. But if it's intimidating, then that's not going to bode well for Coastal again with those road woes. Marcus Johnson, Javante Campbell, Derek Butler, all averaging 13 or more points per game, all averaging almost 3.5 rebounds or more per game as well. So that combination of those 3 players right there is going to be tough to go against up there at home. I will take Bowling Green just like you. Ben took Coastal though. So, hey, let's both hope Ben's right for the Sunbelt aspect. But my money would be on Bowling Green. Not by a strong amount, but I would go that way. All right, going back to what Ben James said earlier in the broadcast, but we weren't really on the Red Wolves yet, so we'll say it now. Red Wolves do have another national television game against Troy on February 15th. So if you are interested in catching some more Sunbelt hoops on an easy channel to find, definitely do that on February 15th and help our viewership numbers out, because the more people that tune into Sunbelt action, the more they want to put Sunbelt games on TV. So throw it on in the background, even if you're not going to pay full attention to it. But one you should definitely pay full attention to this Saturday. Red Wolves 18-6 overall travel to Kent State, who's 14-8 overall. Both teams won their first round matchup in this challenge. Arkansas State over Akron in that overtime game, 80-75. Kent State beat the Cajuns 70-66. Red Wolves coming off that loss here lately, though. Do they get? Or wait, no, they didn't lose their last game, right?
Who? Arkansas State?
Arkansas State. Yeah, they did lose.
Yeah,
right?
they lost Marshall.
That's right. We just talked about that. All right. I was getting them and South Alabama confused there for a second for whatever reason. That's not even two that should really be confused, but that's what was happening in my brain there. Leaning strongly either way here. Both these teams really good. Where's Kent State is, actually as good of a record as they seem to have. They're just sitting down there in fifth in the MAC, actually. So this is one in the Sun Belt versus fifth in the MAC. So not quite a 1-1 or 1-2 kind of matchup here.
I mean, yeah, I'll go with Arkansas State. One of the better mid-major teams. Going on the road at Kansas State is going to be tough, though. But like I said, I don't really know how this game got put together. I would rather see Arkansas State play like a team like Miami of Ohio. I know they've already played Akron, but maybe even a return game to Akron could have been interesting. But yeah, I think I'll go with Arkansas State.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna lean with you on that, and Ben, obviously, of course, he would take the Red Wolves in that one, but I just think the loss actually does them a favor going into this one. No one wants to lose, right? But I feel like that's the kind of game that they need to kind of try and get back into a stride. And again, going on the road, playing away from home might help them do that a little bit easier than trying to rebound at home specifically. Taron Todd, Kobe Julian, Joseph Pinion. I mean, that's the guy right there, right? If he's hitting from three, Kent State's going to have a hard time defending him. And what you say, he transferred in from Arkansas?
Arkansas, yep.
Yeah, so he's hitting almost 40% from three right now. So huge standout. Jamal Sumlin on the other end is kind of the Pinion clone for Kent State, though. He's hitting 43.5% from three. So another strong player, not necessarily their top scorer. He's not in their top three or anything like that. But he is a good three-point shooter. So we could have a really good three-point shooting matchup in this game. Von Cameron Davis, 15.4 points per game, their leading scorer there. And Morgan Safford, 6.1 rebounds per game average. Some other players that might stick out there for Kent State. Ben is saying Red Wolves and a 4-game road stand with Kent State on Saturday. So another little interesting tidbit there. So I think we'll all take A-State and move on, but this is a pretty much a toss-up. But again, I'm going to lean that the Red Wolves are going to come in a little angry and want some revenge, get some victory in this one. All right, is this the last of the 2:00 tip-offs?
Yep.
Okay. Last of the 2 p.m., 1 Central tips. App State travels to Ohio, 14-9 Mountaineers. Bobcats just 12-10 overall. App State and Ohio both lost their first round matchups. App to Miami 77-63 and Ohio to JMU 88-78. I feel like we're going to just repeat all of those, but they are on the screen, so it is worth mentioning. You kind of touched on it, but you want to talk about Tate and Huntley at all in this one for the App State side of things?
I mean, yeah, I think both of them, obviously, they have to both be good if App State wants to win, and then a third guy is going to have to step up no matter who it is. Just got to step up in some way, defensively, offensively, something.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, I wasn't blown away by it, but surprised a little bit that Tate and Huntley are the only two scoring in double figures. I mean, they don't even have a third guy who's getting 10 points per game average-wise. So to me, that's a little concerning. But like you said, if these guys are on, it's already shown that if those two are playing well, that's all that really takes to win. Although they've been winning some games rather close, and that ODU game was close, and then they lost that one. So yeah, it's not going to be easy. AJ Clayton seems to have returned for Ohio. He's their leading scorer at 15.6 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game. He's shooting career best right now from three, just barely better than last year, but it is a statistical thing to point at. He did not play in their losses recently to Miami and Toledo. So if you think those two games are very close as well, if they flip those because Clayton ends up playing in those games, you're looking at a team that comes in with an almost identical record with App 14-9 and Ohio possibly being 14-10. So Clayton definitely does make a little bit of a difference here. So it'll be interesting to see how close this game up is in the end. I think this is, just looking at it from the outside quickly, I was going to say App State rather easily. Once I see this thing about Clayton not playing in those recent losses and those losses being very close, where one player as good as Clayton can be, I don't know. Let me see where App State is on the away game win-loss record. Yeah, 3-5 away from home, and Ohio is 9-1 at home. That solidifies it. I'm going to lean Ohio in this one. I don't want to, but I got to be smart with what I'm seeing here, and I got to be honest with myself and pick head over heart. So I will lean the Bobcats here because of the road struggles for App State and probably just a little bit more consistent offense from the Bobcats at this point.
Yeah, I'll go with Ohio too. I saw them at in the Myrtle Beach Invitational, and they're kind of similar to App State in some ways. They have a elite guard, Jackson Pavletsky, similar to Miles Tate, very good guard, transfer from Iowa State. And then they have AJ Clayton, who you mentioned, and if he plays similar to Huntley a little bit, a stretch big, but who can also bang it down low. So, and then they're surrounded by some good shooters. So, assuming Clayton plays, I'll go with Ohio.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting. That one of those games before that, he played a very short amount of minutes, like almost like he tried to come back to earlier. Maybe that was the game he got banged up in. Didn't go back and read specifically if that was the game, but we'll see if he goes a good amount. Looks like he is going to be the most dangerous guy on the floor. All right, Saturday, the last tip of the day pits Texas State going to Central Michigan, 12-12 Bobcats versus 10-12 Chippewas. I like saying that name. That's fun. Both teams won their first round matchup. Texas State takes down Eastern Michigan 64-44, as we've mentioned before, and Central Michigan gets by South Alabama 74-70. Is this one one of those obvious, like, hey, I'm picking the Bobcats pretty easily in this one, or is this a little closer than it looks from the outside, maybe?
I don't think it's super obvious, but I'll go with Texas State. Yeah, I like them. They've been playing better recently, but I know they've had a couple games here and there that have been pretty bad. But yeah, I'll go with Texas State on the road.
Yeah, this one might be one of those ones on the road that I would favor the Sun Belt in as well. You got Mark Drone, 18.3 points per game average. The leading scorer for CMU is Jacoby Hetty at just 13.5. Their second leading scorer is at 13.3. I will try and say his name, but I'll probably butcher it. Ugnis Hervevsky, something like that. He's from Lithuania. I knew I was going to try and sound that out as best I could for you, but that's a tough name. But yeah, Tylen Pope, Tyrell Morgan, all three of those guys are averaging more than the two leading scorers over there for the Chips. So yeah, I think I'll lean towards the Bobcats in that one for sure. Ben is also leaning towards Texas State and the Bobcats in that one. Hopefully, we should have kept a running total. I honestly didn't keep a running
7
total.
7-5.
That's what we ended up with?
Yep.
I'll take that. Since we got 8 to start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that would take the challenge on both ends. It's not going to blow anybody out of the water, but like you said, these two conferences right now are not tremendously great overall, right? So to beat another conference in both of the rounds 1 and 2 and end up with the overall advantage in the end is something I'd be good with. And Ben saying the Lady Red Bulls basketball looking for their 12th straight win against Bowling Green in Jonesboro on Saturday. Yeah, so the men are all on the road in the MAC environments and venues, and the ladies all get the games at home in the Sun Belt aspect because it was flipped. So nice and easy, clean way to think about it there. Anything final to touch on in this specific matchup or anything really for this weekend?
No, I mean, hopefully there's some good games. There should be at least. And hopefully Sun Belt wins.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Hopefully we can maybe make out better than what we've predicted. But again, our prediction there being 7-5. Thanks for totaling those up, Zach. And again, that combines with the other one, and we're sitting pretty. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will try and get something spelled out with these tiebreakers so we can have a better look at what this bracket, this crazy bracket that we will have at the end of the season looks like. We can kind of keep updating it each week as we go along. I think that'd be kind of a fun aspect to look at it, and then just the standings at all the time. But for Zach Capps and myself, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.